All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Veronica Swift, a storyteller, singer-songwriter known as a sophisticated jazz vocalist, is coming out with her new album, self-titled Veronica Swift. This album genre switches so fast, you're going to hurt your neck trying to follow it. She does so in the best ways as well. We're going to listen to a tune, but before that, today, the day that this podcast is being released, September 20th, 2023, Veronica Swift is playing at the Beachland Tavern. I shouldn't say today. Tonight, Veronica Swift is playing at the Beachland Tavern. So, if you dig what you hear and you want to go see it live, tonight's the night to go check it out. That's September 20th, 2023. If you're hearing this in the future, you missed it. But tonight is the night at the Beachland Tavern. Veronica Swift, you got to be there. This is the first track off the album, I Am What I Am. I Am What I Am off the album, Veronica Swift, self-titled. Tonight at the Beachland Tavern, Veronica Swift, be there. If you dig the Beachland Tavern and you would want to endure my shenanigans, October 7th, my band C-Level, or C-Level, or high-energy funk-punk reggae rock group that takes acoustic 12-string instruments and runs them through Marshall amplifiers. We are opening for MSSV featuring Mike Baguetta, Stephen Hodges, and Mike Watt at the Beachland Tavern October 7th. Also, we are opening for the band Pacifier at the Grog Shop October 19th. That's all the plugs I got. Anyway, here we go. Here's my conversation with Veronica. Well, one thing I found interesting, like diving into getting ready to talk with you, is like your background seems to be all over the place in a way. Like I've heard you tell stories about being on the road with your family as they're playing jazz clubs, and then I've also heard you say you grew up on a farm. So I'm like, where's she coming from? So
yeah. So my mom, her father, my grandfather, he had the farm, so I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. On the farm, but my parents were weekend warrior touring because my mom taught at UVA vocal lessons. And so in the weekends and in the summer, of course, we were always touring, but weekends consisted of like Baltimore, DC, the blues, was it Blues Alley in DC, Baltimore, got Philadelphia, New York, Boston. We would just go up the coast every weekend or so. And, of course, before 9 years old, I was on the road with them, just hanging out as a kid, because they couldn't get someone to watch me or something. But then at 9 years old, I kind of jumped up on stage and started singing with them. First time being the jazz standard in New York City, and that's how the whole thing started. And also there were the summers too, So I joined a kids youth jazz band, like a program from a school that called the Young Rascals Jazz Project. And that was my first professional experience getting paid. When I was 10, I sang and played trumpet. And every summer we'd go to play the Telluride Jazz Festival in Albuquerque and tour that area.
Okay. So
yeah.
That's wild, because that's kind of like A and B. That's like both ends.
It's the best of both worlds. And if you know me, it makes sense. Like, that's how I am. I love getting the best of both worlds, like the rural and the urban, and same thing with genres,
Well, and I definitely think that comes to life on your latest album. Like it's everywhere, like in the best way.
Yeah.
In the best way. So like with a musical family, like I imagine, like I gotta imagine like singing's just something that happens when you're around a family that's just kind of like musical like that. Did you kind of was that the case, or was it not the case, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the best way to describe it is it's like, rather than there being like a moment, just in terms of singing, because I started so young, there wasn't really like a moment where I was like, I want to do that. Like some people have that light bulb. The light bulb moment for me was really in regards to rock and roll specifically. When I started getting into that shit when I was like, 11, 12. But with singing itself, it was just like, and with jazz specifically, a lot of people would assume like it was like it's like something like I'm living my passion, right? But it's the best way to describe it is it's really just like when you grow up speaking a language in your family, whether it's, English or Spanish, your first language, but the language that's spoken at home, that was bebop, because my mom and dad, that's what the music they played, that are the records that they listened to. And that was what they, I was on the road hearing and some of the greatest bebop musicians that they played with. And so it's something that just is intrinsically there that informs everything else I do. But it's not like something I actively really pursued. There may have been like a little phase here and there, but it's just ingrained. And as a kid, you pick that stuff up through osmosis. Like when you were a child learning language, you're like, copy the sounds. You don't know what they mean until a little later, right? Sometimes. But like you're copying the sounds. I'm copying listening to the musical phrases and singing them, whether it's Charlie Parker or Ella Fitzgerald.
That's like, and as far as like that music's concerned, what a great time to be like kind of doused in it. You know what I mean? Because when you really
like that golden age of like when you're so young that you're not like there's no like bad habits or inhibitions, right? You're just purely listening.
Right. And like, if you start to think about some of that stuff too much, you don't say it. There's a weight to it. Like, this is too lofty of a word to use in this sentence. But when you're a kid, you're like, arduous, blah, blah, blah. You're just saying whatever.
Yeah, you just start using the word arduous, even if it doesn't make any sense. Like, this piano is arduous. This or this, I'm feeling arduous out in the sun today. You just use, but you're whatever.
Like literally being like a good word that kids kind of like do the same thing with in a way,
That's so true. I never thought of that.
But that's fascinating. So you were also playing trumpet before, or was that?
Yeah, I played piano and trumpet before I sang. I mean, I was singing in choirs as a kid, but no, piano was where I developed. That's where I, developed a kind of like orchestral understanding, because you can see like the bass and the left hand and the right hand's chords and melody, and you kind of have a whole orchestra at your hands to play with, and playing Bach fugues and stuff like that, and Joplin rags and Beethoven and whatever. Just understanding. Really, my first passion was classical music, because I just loved like how I loved tracing, like what this whole record's about is tracing the lineage, right? And connecting these genres to each other in some of the most seemingly random ways, but they're not. That's what I loved about classical music as a kid. I loved starting with whatever Joplin and going backwards and trying to trace back. Now, how did Gershwin get this? Oh, I see, Debussy and Ravel. Where did they get their stuff from? Oh, that's cool. They have like Chinese and back then they called it Oriental music. But, back in the late 1800s, like the World Fair, and those are basically like music festivals, right? That's where all people were coming together to hear stuff. There was no social media to look at bands and instruments from around the world. That was the World's Fair and all that sort of stuff where the people got to see and be exposed to those things. So composers, that was like a pretty interesting time. That's why I love the Impressionist music. And of course, Mozart, having been really, a lot of composers didn't tour, they just stay in their court. But Mozart was touring as a young child, which exposed him to so many other things so I just love the history of it. You have to be a historian to be a musician, I think, properly.
Well, and like the more you kind of look back at some of these composers and some of their habits in a way, like you in lifestyles, you're like, aside from the time shifts, you're like, there's this common occurring like characters and like yes. Because I found that same thing fascinating, learning about the history of some of these composers almost made their music more interesting to me.
Oh, knowing the story behind why they wrote a certain piece or something.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, that's okay. So you're playing this and you're diving back into stuff, and so that at 11 is when rock and roll strikes. But you already had that professional gig at 10, so it's like you're already doing it to some degree. What was the kind of rock bug that bit you? Who were some of those artists?
Queen, and more Queen. No, I'll tell you, there was a lot of bands. Yeah. Deep Purple, Queen. I include Michael Jackson, even though he's like multi-genre pop artist. He's rock and roll. Let's be honest. His energy. So like Michael Jackson, the Beatles was how I learned how to harmonize. But Queen was like when I realized like, oh my God, this is the band for me. between the glamminess and then like the super, like it's super muso and in some ways like complicated but subtly, and like it's super palatable, and then just great hooky songs, and the voices. I can't get over Brian May's guitar tone and Freddie's sound, and also because of the classical. At that time, I was super into classical music, and I said, when I found this, I was like, oh my God, you can put this shit together. And can I say shit? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, do it. Yeah, no, you're good. The bits I'll tear out. This is like I was saying. This isn't by no means for them. This is to tell everyone about your show at the Beachland, which is coming up quick.
Coming up tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
whatever. Yeah, tomorrow night. It's gonna be so much fun. This is my first step, like, 'cause I've been singing jazz mostly, and now we're like completely changing things up. Now I get to sing all the genres I love in one place, which has been an interesting experiment over the last few years of doing this show. Is we're like, we can play this show in a performing arts center with orchestra, symphony halls, which I have that show.
Yeah.
And we do heavy on the classical stuff, but everything works for like symphony halls, little jazz clubs, rock and roll clubs. I performed this show on stage at the Hollywood Bowl for the music festival there.
Wow.
And it you don't have to change the show. It translates no matter where you're playing or who you're playing for. And that's been my dream since I was a little kid. And so now I'm getting to finally take the first step to playing rock venues, and bring this music to a whole new audience that has yet to discover me and know me. And so Beachland is just the first step in that direction.
That's amazing. Did you kind of like going into like the jazz realm of things, like, have you noticed like, and this isn't like to dog or anything, like, but has there been a acceptance to all these different genres more so in other venues than other venues? Like, is a rock club more accepting to like you just going from this like rock funk tune, like this sick take of like a James Brown version of Closer, into just like scatting, maybe more so than like a jazz fest would be?
So first off, like when we play the show, the people are right there with us. Like, there's no trepidation on the people's part. They're there for it. But if there is any trepidation, it's only because whoever is booking us hasn't seen the show yet. They're like, they have no idea how it works, and then when they come see it, they go, "Oh, now I get it." It's it's just like the Dresden Dolls.
Yeah.
There's some bands out there, like there are bands out there that are super commercially. We can market this and package this in a nice, pretty little box. But then it's like, you know what you're going to get. There's nothing really dangerous about it. There's nothing raw and visceral, right? And so what I love about bands like the Dresden Dolls and Queen is that they were, first off, they were themselves unapologetically. And I think that's how everyone should be, no matter if you're an artist or not. But then there wasn't really no catering to what people's expectations were. That's what I love. And I love being a part of in the audience for a show like that too. And one of the main things people have said to me at shows is they either go, "I'm not a jazz fan, but I love what you do," or "I'm not a rock fan, but I love this show." And that's like, well, sorry to break it to you, but now you're a jazz and rock fan. You're all these things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that's amazing. And I think like it's what moves people's music. Genre is just like how you said, a way to categorize it. But
good music is good music. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. With this whole record, this whole record you're coming out with, like, just from that first tune, it goes from like a jazz, it's a Broadway standard, right? And then it goes into that classical scat, and I was like, that was like the coolest thing I think. I was like, wow, that's so sick. Was that like, maybe I don't know the piece and maybe that's in there somehow, but what inspired the melding of those two genres in that particular song like that?
Yeah. I picked that song to open with, and then I picked Don't Rain on My Parade to close with, because these two theater kind of anthems, gay anthems and self-expression anthems, they bookend the whole record. But of course we end it because we've taken you on this journey and end punk. So we start with jazz because that's where it all started for me when I was a kid, growing up, as I mentioned, with my parents and having grown up on the road with parents as jazz musicians and singing that music. So it had to be a jazz tune to start with, bebop specifically. And then I wanted to get people to know me a little more by putting in I actually wrote that fugue
Yeah?
section.
No
That's
way.
a original.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's because of my first love being Baroque music and Bach and Handel. That was what I picked up before jazz or rock and roll or anything. It was always Baroque music that I loved. My mom used to put on the harpsichord concertos and Brandenburg concertos when I would go to bed thinking I would be going to sleep, but I was not going to sleep. I was wide awake just trying to sing along, and I just loved how all of the lines kind of weave in and out of each other, how they harmonically go to different keys and tonal centers and then find their way back. And that's what I loved about that kind of music. So I had to put that in there since the first song is, one, it's the theme of the record, so it's important. But two, I wanted people to get to know that side of me as well. And every album, on this album, every song, there's a connecting through line genre from piece to piece, which is intentionally done. That's the only way this kind of record works. You can't just do a mashup record, It's got to have a through line with, for example, like the Bach thing and then the bebop, and the bebop is then translated into closer, right? Because it has the scat solo in the middle, right? And so then there's that rock, and then you have the rock and funk element in the next, the do nothing's here for me. And so, yeah, from piece to piece, it's all connected.
That's incredible. Was that like, and I kind of listening to your story, like from our conversation, was that like how some of these genres came to your story? Like having this love for classical music, but playing jazz music and going back and trying to find those influences or appreciation for it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you're talking about the placement of in that song, like, particularly. Is that what you're talking about? The placement of the fugue in that song?
Right, that and like, I guess it'd be kind of hard to be like, 9 Inch Nails before James Brown. That might have been reversed, But as far as like a concept throughout the record, like.
Oh yeah, I see. So like you're asking if specifically from song to song, if the artists and the genres was the ordering of how I discovered them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Oh well, yeah, no, that I didn't do it that way, because also you have to consider programming and keeping people, like, I think of it like a show. Like if I put all the classical songs in the beginning, then it would just be a lot of slow stuff in the record, slow, and then a bunch of fast, up. So in terms of programming, I had to connect it differently. It's not like correlating with in order of appearance, so to speak.
Gotcha. It's just where, but that's so cool to like to have that through line like that. I listened through the album a few times, and like I noticed each change, and like I was like, but I didn't step back and be like, oh, that one's going into that one, and like, which is incredible. That makes it even cooler. Like,
oh, thank you. I'm glad you dig it. On your wavelength.
I was really like, because when I got the email from Michelle, like getting the first performance clip, which was the closer tune. And what kind of, I guess, on that topic, what spoke to that as being like a funk tune? Was that like what brought that to your attention, that this would be the way to take one on?
Right. I actually wrote that arrangement in college. I went to the University of Miami and did fusion. I did funk fusion ensemble, and I don't know what happened, but I think I was just listening. That was back when I was in college. I was super. I had like my alternative goth metal band called Vera Icon, which was like basically Marilyn Manson, 9 Inch Nails, and all that shit. So that's when, and I actually got to hang out with Marilyn Manson, which was the best day ever.
Hold on, put a pin in that. Okay.
Yeah. But at that time, I was also in school, so I was doing my funk fusion thing, and I remember just like listening to Closer one day and singing the bass line and thinking, wow, 9 Inch Nails is really just an industrial funk band. Like they are that's the difference between them and other industrial rock bands. Like these guys are rooted in funk music, right? And like to that bass line, I just kind of stripped that song of all the elements and just got to the root bass line of that. And if you speed it
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
then I'm like, oh wait, Clyde Stubblefield and James Brown and Cold Sweat. Right? They match
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
perfectly. And I'm like, okay. And that's what we're doing. So it's interesting for any of you artists listening that want to arrange stuff differently. You strip the song down to nothing but one element, whether it's the bass line or the chord changes out of time, and then see if you can superimpose anything that's totally a different genre onto that. And that's kind of how the transgenre process takes place.
Mm.
But the key is you can't change the melody or lyrics. Like that's got to stay true to the tune.
Right. Well, because at that point, then it's making your own song.
Yeah.
If you start to change or just sample in a way that you can create on top of that, I think that's an incredible, to really take one bit and shed the rest. To really analyze something from that perspective. I imagine as going through school and learning composition and analyzing classical pieces and all these different genres. I'd imagine someone like you who's influenced and inspired by all these different types of sounds and configurations of stuff kind of hears that maybe a little bit more in a way because you were bouncing from genre to genre.
Yeah. You definitely see a different side of music in general when you do a show like this kind of way. It's definitely more of it's a musical statement, but it's also just a personal statement as well. And it's been permeating and resonating with people outside of this is not just music for musicians.
Yeah. Well, and maybe not even as much of a difference, but a through line, a similarity.
Yeah.
Of the genre is only when does a genre become a genre? When it has a song about itself.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's so interesting.
Because I've been that drives me crazy. Funk's awesome, but then there's a song that's we just want the funk, which is a great song, but if that's done in a corny or trying to algorithmically work way, it's that's not cool. Same with a country song about being country. You know what I mean? That's always.
I think the only people that can get away with this are rock and rollers.
Maybe. I think maybe blues guys are the only ones that can get away because
I know. Yeah. It all starts and ends with the blues, man.
Yeah. Well, so about hanging out with Marilyn Manson, unpin that. How was that? How'd that happen?
When I was doing Vera Icon, which was my goth rock opera that I wrote.
That's amazing.
Which I'm waiting for the day where it makes sense to release that music, But we had our band down in Southern Florida playing rock clubs, and my manager at the time was his name for this project. His name is John Tovar, who just passed away recently. He was Manson's first manager when Manson was living in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And so Tovar, every time Manson comes to town, of course, Tovar gets backstage tickets, and because they were still friendly. And so, Tovar took me to Manson's show and introduced me to him. And I guess Manson picked up a good vibe from me, thank God, because he's one of my heroes. And he invited me on the bus, and we hung out and talked for 5 hours.
Whoa.
And just about music and literature and the state of music and life and where we come from, just getting to know each other. And that was almost 10 years ago, but it was I hope to see him again down the road.
What were some of was there any mind altering oh, I've never read that, or I've never thought of it like that,
Yeah, I don't really. Actually, he did, because we were talking about this project, the Vera Icon project, which that was where my heart was at that time, and he said anything theatrical, which nowadays it's changed. This kind of thing is coming back, the hard rock, gothy, industrial rock and roll, glam stuff is back. But back in the 2010s, that was not in style. And so he was actually you might be better off marketing this in the theater world and kind of doing a Hedwig kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I never thought of that, because you get a more open-minded audience there with the off-Broadway alternative kind of, the Dresden Dolls, exactly what they did. I use them as an example all the time because they're such a unique like they don't sound like anyone else out there, and they have made such a firm grassroots building, and like and they're one of the biggest like alternative underground bands out there, still doing the thing and still growing.
That's such a cool experience though, especially like during that time to be like doing that thing and hanging out with like the heavy hitter of that of that type of music.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Another thing I wanted to ask about, you were working on a film or writing a film.
Oh, this was during COVID. I was,
Right.
What else was I going to do? But that's something that, David Bowie's one of my heroes in terms of how many different artistic mediums he was involved in. And if I ever get my life to a place where I can, financially and also in the scene substantially support a project, I would love to work on this film again. I just kind of did it guerrilla filmmaking back with this independent film company I'm friends with in Virginia. But yeah, that was kind of like a horror psychological thriller that I wrote. Yeah, that's something I do as well.
So cool. As far as like, so was that at all adjacent to this opera?
No,
Okay.
that's a different universe. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
But there is an independent filmmaker in Miami who is hoping to make. They have a deal with Amazon when they want to make some horror films, and in which case this rock opera is perfect. It's about a homicidal nun. So there you go.
Oh my God.
Who joins the cult?
That's amazing.
It's so that would be perfect for. I think that might be in the works down the road for like a musical film, horror film, kind of like like Rocky Horror, but that's a little more goofy, but like a Repo or something,
Yeah, that's so sick. So like, another thing I heard from another interview is you identify yourself as like a storyteller, and just through a little bit of a conversation through all these different mediums, like, and this album itself, like there's this narrative which is ultimately who you are in this music that moves you put together in a way that you want to move other people. Like as far as like when it comes to like crafting these stories and like your like I imagine there's got to be some kind of creative like what's the word, like practice that there is to diving into that. And like do you I guess my question is, do you have a process for like honing this storytelling in all these different mediums? Like did you just write a film because it popped up and like it was clear to you at that point, or you know what I mean? Or
I've always, when it comes to writing, because I'm a composer and lyricist as well, and when I'm writing songs or when I'm coming up with a film script idea or writing a musical, the story itself, just like the melody and lyric, for me it kind of just pops in and comes from seemingly nowhere, but I'm sure it's coming from some subconscious place. I'm unaware of what's going on, while the information that goes in through the computer and comes out. But I run with what I'm given. You kind of know in the moment if you're given something that's really good and you have to stop the presses and just get it down. And then eventually maybe you find connections with other unfinished things. They're like, oh, that goes with this. That drum groove I came up comes with that. That's all kind of secondary stuff. But that initial thing really does just come from nowhere. I'm almost hearing a song in my head already finished, and I just have to write it down. Same thing with a script. I really just, how I did with the fugue, writing the fugue, I just put my phone on record and place it down and just talk to myself in different characters, or I'll just start improvising a fugue, kind of just like whatever. I'll mess up here and there, but then you listen back to that's coming from your straight subconscious. There's no process.
Okay,
There's no like, yeah.
But that is the process in that way. Is just like just getting it out, and like
yes, sir.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's like primary, secondary, and tertiary. There's like different process for each one, but that primary first in first process really is just putting down what's coming from God or whatever it is what we call, that where that unknown place is spiritually.
That the creative spark. Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for calling.
Great frickin' questions, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I really enjoyed this.
Cool. Well, I'm
You're
glad.
gonna be at Beachland?
I'm gonna try.
Yay.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.